The video that ended a karate career is 11 seconds long, and the school district's first response was to suspend the woman who got slapped. Hold that. Freeze it right there. Now go back 2 weeks. Tuesday morning, Route 12. Yo rot up, my brother? Learn some respect. The shout came from the sidewalk. It hit the bus doors before the man did. Denise Okoro was 3 steps down, clipboard in her left hand, right hand on the rail. 30 kids behind her. 30 faces already turning toward the glass. He came fast. Sponsored G-jacket, unzipped. Gym bag still on one shoulder. He smelled like pre-workout powder and cheap cologne. You right up, my family. You drive a bus. Know your lane. Sir, step away from my door, Denise said. The kids are watching you. Her voice was flat, not scared, not loud. It was the voice of a woman reading a number off a form. That flatness is what set him off. He slapped her. Open hand, full hip, the way he'd been taught to load a strike since he was 9. It cracked across her cheek like a board breaking. 2 little girls in row 3 screamed. A kindergartner dropped his juice box, and it burst on the rubber floor. Her head turned with it and came back level. That is the part nobody watching in real time understood. Her head turned with the blow and returned, and her chin was exactly where it had been. Her feet had already moved. Left foot back on a slant, weight split 50-50, hands low and open at her waist. Not fists, open. Across the street, the crossing guard lowered his stop sign an inch. He was 61 years old. He stared at her feet and felt something scratch at the back of his brain. He had seen that stance before, somewhere, a long time ago, on a base, watching young men get corrected by someone who never raised her voice. He could not place it. Not yet, and Denise Okoro did not move. She could have. In under a second, she could have taken his elbow, his balance, and his dignity. In that order, she did not. She stood there with a red handprint blooming on her face, and 30 small faces pressed to the windows behind her. Because that was the math. 30 witnesses under the age of 12. Whatever she did next, they would carry for 20 years. So she did nothing. Griffin Lacroix pointed at her like he'd won something. Discipline, he said. Learn it. He walked off. He did not run. He had no reason to run, because in his mind he had just done a public service. Here's what he didn't know. There was a dash cam over Denise's shoulder, running the whole time. And there was something in her personnel file at the depot that nobody in that suburb had ever bothered to read. 9 years, United States Marine Corps. And for 4 of those years, her job title was instructor, Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. Her job was to take 19-year-olds who thought they were tough and teach them, patiently, that they were not. Griffin Lacroix had just open-hand slapped a woman whose actual profession for 4 years was breaking the confidence of men bigger and faster than him. In groups. Before lunch. The slap was not the injustice in this story. The slap was the small part. But before we continue, subscribe now and tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what time you saw this video. Tonight's story is one you will never forget. Now, who is she? Denise Okoro is 41. She checks her mirrors on a 5 count. Driver, Center, curb, aisle, curb again. Every stop, every single stop, for 6 years, twice a day. She keeps a lint roller clipped behind her seat. Kids' jackets pick up dog hair, and some of these kids have parents who work 3 jobs and don't have time for lint. So she rolls them. 30 seconds a kid at the last stop before school. Nobody asked her to do that. She has a voice that stops a hallway. She has used it maybe 11 times in 6 years. She enlisted at 19. She left at 28. In between, 2 deployments. A logistics billet that taught her how money moves through a system. And then the instructor slot that changed her life. Ask her about it, and she gets short. It was a job, she'll say. It was not just a job. She could put a 240-pound recruit on his back without a raised voice or a wasted step. She taught chokes to men who outweighed her by 90 pounds. She taught them the exit, too. When to let go, how to let go, why the letting go matters more than the taking. Her instructors used to say she had the calmest hands on the deck. So why the bus? Because after 9 years she wanted something small, something with a root, something where she knew every name and nobody died. She said that once, to her sister, at a kitchen table, and never said it again. Her flaw is simple, and it is going to cost her 2 weeks of her life. Denise Okoro reports nothing. She absorbs. She's built to absorb. When a parent screams at her about a late pickup, she absorbs it. When a kid throws a milk carton at her back, she absorbs it, and then she talks to the kid privately. And the kid usually cries and apologizes. When the depot cuts her heat in January, she wears a second jacket and says nothing. Marine Baring reads, "To a certain kind of administrator, as she can take it. And a system that decides you can take it will keep loading." 2 weeks. That's how long the silence had to grow before it grew teeth. Now let's talk about the man who slapped her. Griffin Lacroix is 27. Regional karate champion, 3 years running, in a division he has never once left. Sponsored G. 2,000 followers who agree with everything he says. He trains at Cree Martial Arts on the east side of town, and he is the poster on their front window, literally. His face is 8 feet tall on the glass. His little brother, Tobin, is 9 and rides Route 12. 4 days before the slap, Tobin unbuckled and stood up while the bus was moving, twice, after 2 warnings. Denise wrote him up, standard form, yellow copy home, pink copy to the depot. That is the entire crime. That is what earned her a hand across the face. Griffin read that form at his mother's kitchen counter and got quiet the way some men get quiet. Not thinking quiet, loading quiet. She embarrassed him. He told his training partner that night. She wrote him up, man, in front of people. Bro, there were like 6 kids. That's people. His training partner laughed. Griffin did not laugh. He tapped his knuckle on the counter 12 times. His jaw kept working, like he was chewing something that wasn't there. Here is Griffin's philosophy, which he will repeat all through this story. Out loud, in public, on camera, respect is taken, not earned, not given, taken. He says it at seminars. He said it to a room of 11-year-olds 4 days before he hit Denise Okoro. He does not have a tragic backstory that explains it. I looked. There isn't one. His father is a dentist. His mother sells real estate. He was never bullied. He was good at one thing very young, and the town told him he was special every day for 18 years, and nobody once made him carry a consequence. That's the whole villain. That's all he is. A man who has never been told no by anyone who could enforce it. By 11 that morning, Denise had finished her route. She parked, swept the aisle, wiped down the rail, and sat in the driver's seat for 4 minutes with the engine off. Her cheek was hot. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. And right then, she hated it a little. Then she did the correct thing. The thing they teach you. The thing she believed in. She pulled the dashcam card, walked it to the depot office, and filed a written report. Name, time, location, witnesses, 31, ages 5 through 11, plus 1 crossing guard. She signed it. She dated it. She handed it to a supervisor named Wexler, who did not look up from his monitor for the first 9 seconds. He hit you? Yes. Did you hit him? She looked at him. No. I have to ask. You asked. Wexler took the card. He put it in a manila envelope. He wrote a number on the envelope. He said the district would handle it. The district handled it. 2 days later, Denise Okoro was suspended. Not Griffin Lacroix. Denise Okoro. Bus driver, 6 years, 0 incidents, 31 witnesses. The letter was 1 page. Certified mail. She read it standing at her own mailbox in a house coat at 9:40 in the morning. Pending review of a physical altercation involving district personnel. Both parties are to be separated from the school environment. Both parties. Both. She read that word 4 times. The paper made a small sound in her hand. Not a crumple, just a tick. Once as her grip changed. Then she folded it in thirds, put it in her housecoat pocket, and went inside and made coffee. And that right there is the flaw doing its work. She did not call a lawyer. She did not call a reporter. She did not post anything. She waited. Because the system said review, and she believed in review. And she had spent 9 years inside a system that, whatever else it did, at least wrote things down. She waited 14 days. You are going to want to yell at her for that. Hold on to that feeling. She's going to say something about it herself at the end of this, and it lands harder than anything I could say for her. Because while she waited, a woman named Marisol Pena was reading that same letter over another mother's shoulder in the pickup line. And Marisol Pena does not wait for anything. Marisol Pena is 38. 2 kids on Route 12, a boy and a girl, and a folding table in her garage with a laminator on it. She organizes like weather. You don't argue with weather. You get inside. She got the letter from her friend, and she got the video from a dad who'd gotten it from the crossing guard's nephew, and she watched all 11 seconds on her phone in a parked minivan with the AC running. She watched it 6 times. Then she made 40 copies of the district's own policy at the library for $4.80. Thursday pickup, 3:15. 40-some parents on the sidewalk outside the elementary school, plus a school resource officer, plus 2 teachers, plus a district communications woman named Halbrook, who had come to be present in the community. Marisol climbed up on the low brick wall by the flagpole and held the paper over her head. "Can everybody hear me?" They could. This is the district's physical altercation policy. Section 4. I'm going to read it out loud because I want to make sure I'm stupid and not them. Somebody laughed. Halbrook stopped walking. An altercation, Marisol read, is defined as a physical dispute between two or more parties. She lowered the paper. 2 parties. So here's my question. Play the video. A dad held up his phone. 11 seconds. The shout. The slap. The head that turns and comes back level. The hands that stayed open at her waist. "How many parties do you count?" Marisol said. Silence on that sidewalk. Real silence. Somebody's key fob chirped, and it sounded like a gunshot. "1," a grandmother said. "1," Marisol said. "1 party." A man walked up to a woman doing her job and hit her, and she stood there like a wall, and this district's word for that is altercation. Halbrook lifted her chin. "There's a process. I have the process in my hand. I'm reading it to you." "Ma'am." "The review is confidential and it's not appropriate to." My 6-year-old asked me if bus drivers are allowed to get hit. Marisol didn't raise her voice for that. She dropped it. That was worse. "You want to answer that one?" "He's right there. Blue backpack." Halbrook looked at the kid with the blue backpack. Then she looked at her shoes. Then she turned around and walked to her car, and 11 phones filmed her doing it. And by 7 that night, that walk had more views in that county than anything the district had posted all year. That is the first small bill coming due. Not the big one, just the first. By Friday there were signs, not professional ones, poster, board and marker, the kind kids make. Denise drives Mutu 12. 2 of them showed up, taped to the bus stop pole where it happened. By Monday, there were 9. By Tuesday, somebody had brought a folding chair and left it under them. And nobody could figure out why. And then somebody explained it, and it went around the whole neighborhood. It was for her, in case she came back and needed to sit. Denise drove past that corner in her own car on the 8th day of her suspension, and did not stop. She looked at the chair in her mirror for a full block. Then she went home and cleaned an oven that did not need cleaning. Now, Griffin. Griffin had been quiet for 6 days, which for Griffin is a personal record. His people told him to stay quiet. His sponsor's rep told him to stay quiet. His own mother told him to stay quiet. On day 7, he posted a statement. It was 4 paragraphs. He filmed it in the dojo, under his own 8-foot face, in a fresh gi with the sponsor patch centered. "There's a lot of misinformation out there," he said. "What happened was a moment of mutual disrespect between 2 adults. A misunderstanding about discipline. Mutual." He said it looking straight into the lens. "I was raised to defend my family. That's not a crime. That's a value. And I think a lot of you feel the same way, and you're not allowed to say it anymore." He held up 2 fingers. 2 things. 1, I've never hidden from anything in my life. 2, I've been in this sport since I was 6 years old, and I know what respect looks like. And I know what it looks like when somebody doesn't have it. Then he did the thing that finished him. He bowed to the camera. Slow, formal. The full traditional bow, the one he'd been doing since he was a kid, the one that means I honor this. Then he added, when she's ready to accept responsibility, I'll accept her apology in person. Here's what happened underneath that video. The first comment was from a black belt in Ohio who nobody knows. He pasted the Federation's Code of Conduct. Article 2. Members shall not use trained technique in any unsanctioned physical contact with a member of the public. Just that. No insult, no emoji, somebody liked it. Then 11 people. Then 400. Then a coach in Michigan pasted Article 3. Members shall conduct themselves as representatives of the art at all times, particularly in the presence of minors. Then a father in Georgia pasted Article 7, the one about revocation. By midnight there were 9,000 comments, and most of them were the same document. Article 2. Article 2. Article 2. Over and over, in every language, the Federation has a chapter in, scrolling down a video where a man in a sponsored gi bows to a camera about respect. 10,000 copies of his own rulebook, stacked under his own face. He turned the comments off at 1:14 a.m. Then he turned them back on at 1:40. Because he could not stand the idea of people thinking he'd flinched. He read them until 4. That's karma with a small k. That's the drip. The big one is still 2 weeks out, and it needs help, because the man who could stop all of this was already picking up a phone. Alden Cree is 55. He wears a quarter zip in every season. He has been on the school board for 11 years, and he is very good at meetings, which is a specific skill that has nothing to do with being right. He also owns Cree Martial Arts. 2 locations. Griffin Lacroix has been his student since Griffin was 9 years old. That's the part everybody in that town knew, and nobody in that town thought about, because it was normal. Small towns are like that. Everybody wears 2 hats, and everybody agrees not to mention the second one. The board met on a Tuesday. 6:30. Cafeteria of the middle school, folding chairs, a microphone that clipped, 91 people in a room built for 40. Item 9 on the agenda. Personnel review, transportation. Alden Cree ran it because he chaired the review committee, and nobody said a word about that either. We have a personnel matter, he said. I want to be careful. There are minors involved. That's the move. Watch it. It's beautiful and it's filthy. He didn't defend Griffin. He never once said Griffin's name. He said minors, and he said process, and he said fairness to all parties. And he made the room feel like anyone who wanted to see the video was the kind of person who exploits children. A father in the 3rd row stood up anyway. Play the footage, sir. Play the dash cam. It's 11 seconds. Everybody in this room has already seen it on a phone. Play it on the screen. Cree folded his hands. The dash cam footage is currently unavailable. The room made a sound, not words. Air. Udefer, the father said. The unit was pulled for scheduled maintenance. There's a service ticket. The file is not accessible pending recovery. I'm not going to speculate about a piece of evidence I can't see. and I'd ask that nobody else does either. He said it so reasonably. Count that debt double. Write it down. A man who profits from the assailant declared the evidence broken, in public, into a microphone, with the assailant's own 8-foot face on a window 4 miles away. Marisol Pena raised her hand and was not called on for 19 minutes. But in the back of that cafeteria, standing against the wall, because he'd come straight from work and didn't want to get grease on a chair, there was a man in a depot jacket that said Hugo on the chest. Hugo Barantes, 59. Bus mechanic, 22 years. Not on the agenda. Not mentioned by anyone that night. Not asked a single question. Hugo knew exactly which unit that camera came out of, because he pulled it himself. He also knew the date he pulled it, and he knew the date on the service ticket because he'd been handed the service ticket 4 days after the fact and told to backdate his initials, and he'd initialed it. Because he had a daughter in college and 11 months to his pension. He stood against that wall and listened to a board member say the word unavailable. Then he drove back to the depot at 9:40 at night, let himself in with his own key, sat down at the diagnostics laptop, and copied the file to a drive he bought at a gas station for $19. He did not tell anyone, not for 6 days. Day 10 of the suspension. Denise's phone rang at 6:02 in the morning, and she was already awake, sitting at her kitchen table in her uniform. She had put the uniform on every single day. Nobody knew that. Not her sister. Not Marisol. She put on the blue shirt and the badge and the shoes with the good tread at 4:50, like the route was still hers. And then she sat down and drank coffee in an empty house. That is not strength. Watch her later and remember this part. That is a woman who does not know how to be a civilian. The call was the depot. Wexler. There's an open house Saturday. Bus safety day. You're still suspended, so obviously you're not working it. Understood. But the union rep says you're allowed on the property as a member of the public. Okay, Denise. He paused. He was about to be a person for 4 seconds and then stop. It's a bad look either way. If you come, they'll say you're making a scene. If you don't, they'll say you're hiding. What would you do? I'd stay home. Noted, she said, and hung up and finished her coffee. Saturday's bus safety day is where this ends. Remember that. Everything from here is loading. Because Griffin found out about it too. He announced it. Of course he did. A short clip, 40 seconds, filmed in the parking lot of his dojo, with 3 of his students standing behind him in a wedge like backup dancers. I'll be at the depot open house Saturday, he said. Public event. I've asked for a conversation for 2 weeks and gotten nothing but lawyers and lies about me. So I'll be there, in front of everybody, and if she's got something to say to me, she can say it to my face. He tilted his head. And if she's ready to make this right, I'll accept her apology in front of the whole community. That's how you close a matter. You bow and it's done. Her apology. Read that again. 14 days after he hit a woman in front of 30 children, he scheduled a public ceremony where she thanks him. The villain built the stage. He rented the lights. He invited the cameras. Every single thing that happens on that asphalt Saturday exists because Griffin LaCroix could not resist an audience. But first, somebody had to find out what this was actually about. Because everybody had the story wrong, including me, including you, right now. You've been watching this thinking the system is slow, bureaucratic, cowardly, maybe. A bunch of tired administrator protecting a process because process is easier than courage. That's not what this is. Marisol Pena found it on a Wednesday night, with a glass of wine she never drank, going through 18 months of district budget documents on a public portal that any parent can access, and no parent ever does. She wasn't even looking for it. She was looking for the transportation line item because she wanted to know how much a dashcam costs. She found a different line. Student Wellness, Anti-Bullying Assembly Program. Vendor, Cree Martial Arts, LLC. $11,400 a year for 3 years. She sat very still for about a minute. Then she pulled the vendor invoices, because those are public too. And there it was in a scanned PDF with a signature at the bottom. Every assembly. Same format. A 40-minute presentation on respect and anti-bullying, delivered to every elementary school in the district by a certified instructor from Cree Martial Arts. And on 11 of those invoices, in the line that says presenter, one name, G. LaCroix. The school board member who declared the video unavailable owns the company the district pays to teach children about bullying. And the man who slapped the bus driver is that company's lead presenter. And he has stood on those gym floors, in that gi, with a microphone, and told 8-year-olds what a bully looks like. $11,400 a year. Times 3. Marisol put the glass down without drinking any of it. "Oh," she said out loud, to nobody. "Oh, you're not slow. You're just paid. That's the whole thing. That is the entire engine of this story. It was never a cover-up out of laziness. It was a cover-up out of accounting. If Griffin LaCroix is a man who hits women in front of children, then Cree Martial Arts cannot be the district's anti-bullying vendor. And if Cree Martial Arts is not the anti-bullying vendor, then a school board member loses $34,000 and a lot more than that in enrollment, because the assemblies are also, functionally, a recruiting pitch delivered by the government to a captive audience of 8-year-olds. The cover-up is a business model. Every day that video stays unavailable is a day the invoice stays clean. Marisol drove to Denise's house at 10:40 at night with her laptop under her arm and knocked on the door hard enough to wake the dog next door. Denise opened it in the uniform. Marisol looked at the uniform for a second and decided not to say anything about it. And that was the kindest thing anyone did for Denise Okoro in 14 days. "Sit down," Marisol said. "You need to see something." They sat at the kitchen table. Marisol turned the screen. Denise read it top to bottom, twice. Her face did not move. "Say something," Marisol said. "It's a sole source vendor with no competitive bid. That's what you got out of this?" "That's the part that's illegal," Denise said. "The rest is just ugly." Marisol stared at her. "You know how to read this stuff. I did logistics for 4 years before I taught. Contracts, requisitions, vendor packets. Denise scrolled. This purchase order is split. See? 11.4 is under the threshold for board approval. If it were 12,000, it goes to a vote. It's not 12,000. It's never 12,000. It's 11.4 3 years running. That's on purpose. That's always on purpose. Marisol pushed back from the table. Then why? She said. Are you sitting in a kitchen? Denise didn't answer. 14 days, Marisol said. 14 days you've said nothing. No statement, no interview, no post. You let a man call it mutual on camera, and you said nothing. My kids ask me every day if you're coming back, and I don't have an answer. And you're in here ironing a shirt for a bus you're not allowed to drive. I filed a report. They ate your report. There's a process. Denise. Marisol put both hands flat on the table. You keep taking it like a Marine. Take it like a witness instead. That's the line. That's the whole turn of this story, and it came from a mother of 2 in a parking lot cardigan at 11 o'clock at night. Denise sat with it. I want to tell you exactly what changed, because it wasn't rage. Nothing about her got louder. She stood up. She got a legal pad out of a drawer. She sat back down and wrote a date at the top of the page. Okay, she said. Then we do this properly. What's properly? Properly is a paper trail that a lawyer can't argue with and a newspaper can't get wrong. She was already writing. I need every invoice. I need the purchase orders, not just the invoices. I need the board minutes for the 3 votes where Cree was in the room. I need to know who signed the receiving report. How do you know there's a receiving report? Because there's always a receiving report, Denise said. And it is always signed by somebody who did not receive anything. Marisol started to laugh and then didn't because Denise wasn't joking. And I need the maintenance ticket for that camera. Cree said it's unavailable. He said the footage is unavailable. He said there's a ticket. Denise looked up. A ticket has a date on it. Dates are the only honest thing in a bureaucracy. Everything else can be phrased. They worked until 2:15 in the morning. At some point, Marisol looked over, and Denise had built a timeline down the left margin of the legal pad in block capitals, evenly spaced, with times in 24-hour notation. 9 years of habit doesn't leave. It just waits for somebody to hand it a reason. Thursday. 2 days before the open house. Hugo Barantz had been carrying a $19 drive in his jacket pocket for 6 days. He'd taken it out 4 times and put it back 4 times. His daughter called him Thursday at lunch about a textbook. He got off the phone, sat in his truck in the depot lot, with a sandwich he didn't eat, and thought about 11 months to his pension, and a woman who used to bring him coffee in the winter without being asked, because she noticed the bay doors don't close all the way. He found Denise's number in the depot directory. "It's Hugo," he said, "from the shop. I know who you are. I need to say something, and then I need to hang up before I change my mind. Go ahead." I pulled that camera myself. On the 16th, I copied the file that same week before anybody told me anything. He was talking fast. The service ticket says the 22nd. They handed it to me on the 26th and asked me to initial it for the 22nd. Denise closed her eyes. Did you initial it? Yes. Okay. I have a daughter, Hugo. Her voice went flat and even, and it stopped him cold. I'm not going to ask you why. I'm going to ask you one question. Does your copy have the original file metadata on it? Ach. Yeah, I copied the whole folder. Timestamps and everything. Then don't touch it again. Don't open it. Don't rename it. Bring the drive to my house tonight, and I'll give you a written receipt with the time on it, signed by me and one witness. A receipt? You're going to want the receipt, Denise said. Trust me. He brought it at 8. She wrote him a receipt on the legal pad, tore it off, and had Marisol sign under her. Hugo folded it into his wallet like a check. At the door, he stopped. They kept saying it broke, he said. In the meeting. That thing didn't break. That's a $30 card in a plastic housing. Nothing broke. Nothing has ever broken. I know, Denise said. You gonna be all right? I've been all right for 2 weeks. That's the problem. Here's what that drive did in 18 hours. The file's creation timestamp was 6 days before the maintenance ticket claimed the unit was pulled. 6 days. Which means the district's own service record says a camera was removed on the 22nd. And the district's own footage from that camera was copied and sitting on a shelf on the 16th. You cannot phrase your way out of a date. Denise wrote it up in one page, not a rant, a page. Timeline down the left, source down the right, every claim with a document behind it, no adjectives. She sent it to exactly 4 people. The district's general counsel, the state's transportation compliance office, the school board's vice chair, and a reporter at the county paper who had called her 6 times and never gotten a callback. She sent it at 6:20 on Friday evening. At 11:04 p.m. Friday night, a board member named Catherine Sisk resigned from the Personnel Review Committee by email. 11:04. On a Friday, in August. Nobody sends that email at that hour for a good reason. That is the email of a woman who read 1 page, checked 2 dates, and decided she was not going down with it. Her resignation was 2 sentences long. The second sentence said she had no prior knowledge of any vendor relationship. No prior knowledge. Underline that. That's not a resignation. That's a fire exit with somebody's arm already through it. Saturday morning, 7:50 a.m. Griffin LaCroix's sponsor posted 11 words on their brand account. We are pausing our partnership with Griffin LaCroix pending facts. Pending facts. 11 words. No apology, no praise, no history. In the sponsorship world, that sentence is a body bag with a zipper. Griffin found out at 8:04. He was in his car. He'd already put the gi on for the open house. The good one. The one with the patch. He looked down at the patch on his own chest for a while. Then he drove to the depot anyway. That is the single most important decision in this story. And he made it in a parking lot in 4 minutes. His mother called twice on the way. He let it go. And that same morning at 9:15, the PTA president of the largest elementary school in the district sent a letter canceling the anti-bullying assembly program. Not postponing. Canceling. 3 paragraphs, very polite. The last line thanked Cree Martial Arts for 3 years of service to district students. Attached to the letter, as a PDF, was Invoice 2214, the one with G. Lacroix typed in the presenter field. They didn't say a word about it. They just attached it. A PTA president in a Saturday morning kitchen made the cleanest cut in this entire story by adding a document to an email and pressing send. Alden Cree got that email at 9:16 in his office at the dojo. Under a wall of trophies, he read it twice. Then he called Griffin, and Griffin did not pick up, because Griffin was already 12 minutes from the depot, with 3 students in the back seat and a jaw that would not stop working. Bus Safety Day starts at 10. Picture it, the depot yard, 2 acres of asphalt, 11 buses parked in a row with their doors open so kids can climb in and honk the horns. A folding table with juice boxes, a fire truck because there is always a fire truck, a dunk tank that will matter in about 4 minutes. 240 people, by the county paper's count, most of them under 4 feet tall. Denise Okoro came. She did not wear the uniform. She wore jeans and a plain gray shirt, and she came in through the public gate with the parents, and she stood by the fence with her hands folded in front of her. Marisol found her in 1 minute and 30 seconds. "You came." "They're my kids," Denise said. "For 6 years they've been my kids." A first grader spotted her and screamed her name, and then 11 kids were around her legs, and one of them was crying and would not explain why. Denise crouched down and did the lint roller thing from memory on a kid's shoulder with her bare hand because she didn't have the roller. That's when the noise at the front gate changed. You could hear it move across the yard like a wave hitting a seawall. Talking, then quiet, then a different kind of talking. Griffin Lacroix walked into the middle of a children's safety event in a white gi with a black belt tied over it and 3 students behind him in a wedge. He had a phone on a gimbal. One of the students was filming. Of course, one of the students was filming. He'd come to be seen. A depot supervisor moved to intercept, and Griffin walked around him without breaking stride, the way you walk around a cone. He found her in about 9 seconds. She was still crouched down with a kid's shoulder in her hand. "Denies." He said it loud enough that the dunk tank stopped. "I'm here." Publicly. Like I said I would be. She stood up slowly. She put the kid behind her with one hand. Not dramatically. Just moved him behind her hip. The way you move something out of a doorway. "Not here," she said. "Here's exactly where. You made it public. So we finish it public. There are children at this event." "There were children 2 weeks ago," Griffin said, "when you disrespected my family. And 100 parents heard him say that, and I want you to understand that in his head, right then, that was his best line." Nobody clapped. That is worth saying out loud, because Griffin was waiting for it. There was a half-second where his chin lifted, expecting something. A murmur, agreement. Somebody on his side. 240 people, and not one sound. A woman near the fence said, "Are you serious right now?" in the tone people use on airplanes. He heard it. His jaw started working. I'm going to say this simply, Griffin said, to the crowd, not to her. I've been called a criminal for 2 weeks by people who weren't there. I came here to close it the right way. She says her piece. I say mine, we bow, it's done. Sir, Denise said, step back from these kids. Say you're sorry for the write-up. No. The word was small. She didn't even put weight on it. Say it, and this is over. No. Then you're just going to stand there? Yes, Denise said. That's what I've been doing. Somebody in the crowd laughed. One person. Sharp, involuntary, the kind of laugh that escapes. Griffin's head turned toward it. That laugh is the last thing anyone said before he put his hand on her. He grabbed her left shoulder. Full grip, thumb dug in, and turned her toward the phone on the gimbal. Everybody see this, he shouted. Everybody sees who bows first. And he raised his right hand. Same hand. Same load. Hip cocked, elbow high. The exact strike he'd thrown at a bus stop 14 days earlier, in front of 30 kids, and now in front of 240. Parents were already moving. A mother screamed. A dad 3 rows back was running and would not have made it in time. He didn't have to. The hand never landed. I want to slow this down because it is 1 second long, and it is the second this entire story exists for. His wrist came forward and stopped. She caught it. Not a block, no impact, no slap of forearms. Her right hand met the inside of his wrist while it was still accelerating, and simply went with it. 1 inch further than he intended to go, and turned it over. That's all. She turned it over. The wrist rolls, the elbow follows. The shoulder follows the elbow. And a man's own structure walks him down. He can go with it, or he can break something of his own. It is not strength. It is angle and timing. And she had 4 years of teaching it 8 hours a day to men who did not want to learn. His grip on her shoulder released itself, because a hand cannot hold anything when the arm above it is rotating. He went down on his right knee, then his left. His gi pants scraped the asphalt. She stepped once, to the outside, and put her hip where his balance used to be. And it was over. The regional champion of a 3-year division was kneeling on the depot asphalt with his own arm folded into his own shoulder, held by a bus driver in jeans and a gray shirt, in front of every parent on Route 12 and one phone on a gimbal that never stopped recording. No punch was thrown, not one. His gi was not even pulled off his shoulder. And here is the part I need you to hear, because it is the whole woman in one detail. She turned him away from the children. In that same second, mid-technique, she rotated his body so that his face pointed at the fence and his back pointed at the crowd of kids. And she was down on one knee with him, so that the two of them were the same height, and it looked, from 30 feet away, almost like somebody helping somebody tie a shoe. She didn't want them to see his face. The man who slapped her in front of 30 children. And she stood there on an asphalt lot, managing the sight lines for a bunch of 6-year-olds. The pressure she used could be measured in ounces. Anyone who has ever been in that position knows the truth. At that angle, the amount of force required is almost nothing. And the amount of force available is almost everything. He knew both numbers instantly. Okay. His voice cracked in the middle of it. Okay, okay. She let go. Immediately, before the second syllable finished. Her hands came off him and went up, open, shoulder height, palms out, and she stood and took 2 full steps backward. 2 steps. That's a taught habit. You do not stand over a person you have just controlled. You give them the room to get up without an audience watching them decide. Griffin Lacroix knelt there for 4 seconds with nobody touching him. Then he got up, and his legs did not work correctly. And he grabbed at the air near his own wrist, like he was checking whether it was still his. He looked at his students. His students were staring at Denise. One of them, a kid of 19 in a dojo hoodie, said out loud, to nobody, "What was that?" And from the edge of the crowd, a man in a yellow vest with a stop sign still in his hand, 61 years old, works the crossing at Beechwood and Vine. Has been trying to place a stance for 14 days. Finally placed it. Marine Corps, he said. Heads turned. He said it again, louder. And his voice went strange on him. That's Marine Corps. She taught it 9 years. 240 people turned to look at a woman in a gray shirt with her hands still open at her sides. Someone dropped a juice box. A coach from the youth wrestling program, who had come for the fire truck, half rose out of a folding chair and stayed frozen at that angle for a solid 3 seconds. A woman behind the table said, "No, no, no, no," and put her hand over her mouth and started laughing and crying at the same time. Griffin stood in the middle of it, breathing hard in a paused sponsor's gi on a lot full of school buses. He looked at Denise. "You! He couldn't finish it. You never said. You never asked," Denise said. Then she said the line the whole county repeated for a month. She said it at conversation volume. She did not point. She barely moved. Respect isn't taught with a slap. Sit down. Class is over. There is no clean way to describe what a crowd does with that. It wasn't a cheer. It was 200 people making noise at once with no organization to it. And somewhere under it, a woman shouting, "That's Moot 12." And somewhere under that, a kid asking his mother what MSIMAP means. Griffin Lacroix walked out through the public gate alone. His 3 students did not follow him. That's not a detail, I added. They stood there. One of them untied his own belt on the walk to the car and did not put it back on. The depot supervisor tried to say something about liability. Marisol Pena said, "The board meets at 6:30. Say it there." And that is exactly where it went. All of it, that same night 4 hours later, in a middle school cafeteria with a broken microphone. They had to move it to the gym, 310 people. The county paper was there, 2 TV cameras from the city, 40 miles out, which had never once covered a school board meeting in that district in the history of the district. The agenda had 9 items. They never got past item 4. Catherine Sisk was not there. Her chair had her nameplate and nothing behind it. Alden Cree was there, in the quarter zip, hands folded. And he opened the way he always opened. "We have a personnel matter, and I want to be careful. Play the video." It came from the middle of the room, and then it came from everywhere. And it was not a chant. It was worse than a chant. It was 300 people saying the same 4 words at different times in a gym with a hard ceiling. The district's general counsel, a man named Pruitt, who had gotten 1 page in an email at 6:20 the night before and had not slept, leaned into the microphone. "We'll play it," he said. Cree turned to look at him. "Alden," Pruitt said, off mic, and it carried anyway because the gym was silent. "It's on the drive." "It's been on the drive the whole time." They played 11 seconds on the big screen. 300 people watched a man run up to a woman who was 3 steps down from a bus full of children and shout and hit her across the face, and watched her head turn and come back level, and watched her hands stay open at her waist. Then they played it again, because somebody asked. The second time you could hear it. The kids screaming, 30 little voices behind glass. That's what did it. Not the slap. The sound of the kids. A grandfather in the 4th row stood up and walked out of the gym and stood in the hallway with his hand on the back of his neck. He came back in 2 minutes later. Nobody said anything about it. Denise Okoro walked to the podium at 7:41 p.m. She had 3 minutes, like every other member of the public. She used 2. "My name is Denise Okoro. I drive Route 12. She put 1 sheet of paper on the podium and never looked at it. On the 16th at 7:12 in the morning, a man came to my door and hit me while 31 children watched through the glass. I filed a report the same morning. 2 days later, this district suspended me under a policy that requires 2 parties. She let that sit. I want to say one thing to the man who did it, and then I'm going to sit down." She looked up and out at a gym full of people, and she said it at exactly the volume you'd use to tell somebody their headlights were on. "You told me to learn some respect." 300 people did not breathe. I taught it. 9 years. To Marines. I taught 19-year-old kids how to control a person without hurting them. And then I taught them the harder part, which is when to let go. I let go of you in under a second this morning, in front of your students, on camera. She squared the paper on the podium. "So here's your lesson, and it's free. Respect isn't something you take off somebody. It's something you're either carrying or you're not. You've been carrying a trophy and calling it respect since you were 9 years old, and this whole town let you. And today it cost you everything in about 1 second." She stepped back. "That's my 3 minutes. I only needed 2. She sat down in a folding chair in the 2nd row, and the noise in that gym went on for a full 40 seconds. And she looked at her hands the entire time. Marisol Pena was next. She did not do a speech. She had learned something from watching Denise work a legal pad for a week. "Item 4 is a vendor question," she said. "I'd like these read into the public record." She held up 3 pages. Invowert 2209. Vendor, Cree Martial Arts LLC. Anti-Bullying Assembly Program. $11,400. Presenter, quote, G. Lacroix. The gym made a sound. Invor 2211. Same vendor. Same amount. Same presenter. Louder. Invover 2214. Same. Signed for by the board's review committee chair, who is sitting 9 feet in front of me, and who told this room 2 weeks ago that a video was unavailable. She set the pages down on the podium and squared them. And she was not smiling, and she did not raise her voice once. For 3 years, this district paid the assailant's own dojo to come into our elementary schools and teach our children about bullying. He presented 11 of those assemblies personally. My daughter sat on a gym floor and listened to that man explain what a bully looks like. She looked directly at Alden Cree. You weren't slow. You had an invoice. Alden Cree said nothing for 11 seconds. I counted on the recording. 11. Somebody in the front row later said you could hear his chair. Then he reached for the microphone and said, I'm going to recuse myself from this item. And the entire gym laughed at him. That is the sound a man's career makes. It isn't booing, it's laughter. It's 300 neighbors laughing at a man in a quarter zip who has run meetings in this town for 11 years. And there is no procedure in the world that gets you back up from that. He left at 8:05, out the side door by the equipment cage, and 2 people filmed him doing it. Attorney Pruitt read the reversal at 8:20. You could tell it had been written in a hurry, because it was full of the words lawyers use when they are trying to apologize without giving you anything to sue over, and because he stumbled twice on his own sentences. The suspension of the employee was rescinded, effective immediately. Full back pay. The physical altercation finding was vacated as inconsistent with the documentary record. The district acknowledged that the employee acted appropriately and, quote, with restraint that protected students in her care. And then at the end, one line that was clearly not in the first draft, because he read it slower than the rest. The district apologizes to Miss Okoro. Publicly, on the record, we got this wrong and she paid for it. 2 TV cameras were on him when he said it. 300 people stood up, not gradually, all at once, like a wave in a middle school gym at 8:21 on a Tuesday night, for a woman who drives a bus. Denise stood too, because she didn't know what else to do with her body, and Marisol had to tell her twice that they were standing for her. By morning it was national. The Federation issued its statement at 7:02 a.m. Eastern. Griffin Lacroix, suspended from all sanctioned competition and instruction, pending a disciplinary hearing under Article 2, unsanctioned use of trained technique against a member of the public, and Article 3, conduct in the presence of minors. Article 2, the same words 10,000 strangers had pasted under his own bow. His sponsor's pause became a termination 4 hours later. 2 sentences. His 8-foot face came off the dojo window that Thursday, and the guy who scraped it off did it with a razor and a bottle of spray. And somebody filmed that too, because that's the world now. Cree Martial Arts lost the district contract permanently, lost 41 students in 9 days, and closed the second location before Thanksgiving. Alden Cree resigned from the school board by letter on the 9th of the month. 2 paragraphs. He cited, and I am not making this up, the need to focus on his family business. Catherine Sisk's fire exit email got her nothing. The State Compliance Office opened a review of a sole source vendor split under the board approval threshold 3 years running, and her name is on all 3 votes. And Hugo Barrantes, Denise named him at the podium, out loud in front of the TV cameras, before she named anyone else. The reason there is a record at all, she said, is a mechanic named Hugo Barrantes, who copied a file at 9:40 at night with 11 months left to his pension and a daughter in college. He was not on the agenda. He was never asked a single question. He did it anyway. They gave him a standing ovation he did not want. He stood up in a depot jacket and sat back down in under 2 seconds. His daughter has that clip saved on 3 devices. The district did not fire him. They could not, in that room, on that night, with those cameras. That timing was not luck. Denise chose the moment she said his name, and she chose it the way she checks her mirrors. Driver, center, curb, aisle, curb. Griffin Lacroix's Federation hearing came out in November. 2-year suspension, reduced to 18 months on completion of a community service requirement. The Federation runs a program where suspended members work youth events, set up and breakdown. No instruction, no mat time, no uniform. He is folding chairs. That's it. That's the whole thing. A regional champion, 3 years running, stacking folding metal chairs on a gym floor at 7 in the morning while other people's kids compete, and putting them back on the cart at 4, and doing that for 18 months. A dad at one of those tournaments recognized him in February and asked carefully if he was who he thought he was. Griffin said, "Yeah." The dad said, "You doing all right?" And Griffin said, "I'm doing chairs. That is the only humanizing thing I am going to give you about him. And I am giving it to you because it is true, not because he earned it." Denise Okoro was back on Route 12 11 days after the meeting. The first morning, the parents had filled the whole corner. Not a protest. Just parents standing on a sidewalk at 7:05 in the morning holding coffee. The folding chair was still taped to the pole. Somebody had taped a second one next to it. She pulled up, checked her mirrors on a 5 count, opened the door, and a 9-year-old named Tobin Lacroix was standing at the front of the line with his backpack on both shoulders, which is not how he used to wear it. The whole corner went quiet. Just Denise looked at him. He looked at the step. "Morning, Tobin," she said. "Morning, Miss Denise. Row 4's open." He got on. He sat down. He buckled. And that is the last thing anybody has to say about Tobin Lacroix in this story, because he is 9, and none of this was his. She rolled the lint off 2 jackets before the school stop. She honked twice at the crossing guard at Beechwood and Vine, and he pointed his stop sign at her like a sword every morning for the rest of that school year. Now I want to tell you the things she said afterward, because it is not what you think. A reporter asked her what the hardest part was, and she gave the answer everybody expected. The slap, the review, the letter. Then she called the reporter back 40 minutes later and said she wanted to change her answer. Here it is. The slap never kept her up at night. Not 1 hour. She'd taken worse in a training pit at 23 from a man twice her size and slept fine. What kept her up was the 2 weeks. 30 kids watched a grown man hit me, she said, and then 30 kids watched me disappear for 2 weeks. So what did I teach them? I taught them that when an adult gets hit at work, the adult goes away, and the man who hit her keeps posting videos. I taught them that getting hit politely is part of a job. She said the lesson she wishes she'd taught faster was not how to catch a wrist. It was this: reporting something once is not the same as defending yourself, and silence in a uniform still looks like agreement to a 6-year-old. I thought I was being disciplined, she said. I was being convenient. There's a difference, and it took me 2 weeks to feel it. She waited 14 days because she trusted a process, and the process was being paid $11,400 a year not to work. Quiet strength isn't standing there while it happens. Quiet strength is knowing the difference between the moment to hold and the moment to speak, and being willing to be loud when the small people are watching. So here's the question, and I want a real answer in the comments, because both sides of this are defensible, and I've argued myself into each of them twice. Denise waited 2 weeks and worked the paper trail instead of going public on day 1. Discipline, or did the kids on Route 12 deserve a louder defense sooner? Tell us below. If this story hit you, subscribe now, share it with someone who respects quiet strength, and tell us in the comments which moment hit you the hardest. We will see you for the next story. It is already waiting.